What's up, Nintendo Dads family? It's Antonio, and today we are reviewing Spicy Euro Games' retro platformer Polyroll, which is available now on the Nintendo eShop. In Polyroll, you play as a roly-poly who uses his shell to roll, bounce, and spin across a mechanical bug-themed world in an effort to save his friends who are kidnapped by the evil Kaiser Kiwi. With that said, you now know as much about Polyroll's story as I do. We get this initial scene showing our villain, our kidnapped friends, and our protagonist. But other than a sign in Polyroll's house, we are not confronted with the purpose of our mission again until Kaiser Kiwi's castle at the end of the game. For a genre that relies heavily on story, this iteration felt thin and at times forgettable. After researching Polyroll, I was able to uncover the game's lore, origins, and Kaiser Kiwi's motivation. Turns out Kaiser Kiwi was abandoned as a chick, raised by hawks, and developed a hatred towards all happy things as well as a penchant for engineering. There's no reason that this should not have been included in the game. It would have added a layer of depth that this game desperately needed. The game was initially conceived as a Sonic fan game, grew from there in size and scope, and brought to the Switch with the help of HOF Studios and Shiny Dolphin Games. One of the primary differences between Sonic and Polyroll is the focus on exploration rather than speedrunning. The creators felt like blending the new and old would hook new players. In the end, this was one of the disconnects for me. The game felt like it should play like a runner, but was designed for more deliberate exploration. Where the story was thin though, the music added real charm to the gameplay. It was by far one of my favorite parts of the game. Produced by Lucky Lion Studios, Polyroll's music blends classic, upbeat 16-bit era chiptunes with hints of new wave, funk, and modern electronica. It's that collision of SNES, Genesis nostalgia, and originality that makes the soundtrack so enjoyable. There are various tracks for the title screen, overworld, and boss battles, with the addition of land-specific tracks that play over each stage within a given land. I really dug the use of piano in the Marble Museum as well as a tambourine in the fire track. Polyroll himself has a unique set of abilities. Like most platformers, you can run and jump, but rolling up tightly into a ball is where his moveset differs. Once curled up, Polyroll can channel his roll and release it to shoot across the stage. When rolling, he can jump at walls to bounce and ricochet to reach remote areas. This, along with the bumpers and springs scattered throughout each stage, injects elements of pinball into the experience, similar to Sonic or Yoku's Island Express, for instance. The height and distance of Polyroll's jump is directly connected to the amount of speed and momentum you have as the jump is initiated. This ability showcased some of the more creative aspects of the environment and level design. When Polyroll jumps, he automatically forms a ball, which is his only weapon. Throughout a stage, Polyroll will encounter, granted, a very limited variety of enemies, all of which can be defeated by rolling into them, jumping into them while in a ball, or using an ability that we'll talk about a little bit later. The primary goal of each stage is no different from any other platform. You are tasked with traversing your environment, defeating enemies, and reaching the end without dying. The secondary goal in Polyroll is to collect two varieties of gems. The smaller pink, purple, and green gems are more common, scattered throughout the levels, and when you collect 10 of them, you will fill up one of your heart containers, which you'll see in the top left corner of your gameplay. The larger golden gems, on the other hand, are limited to 3 per stage and 96 in total. Collecting these gems unlocks new areas of the map, similar to stars and overcoats. For the most part, they are located in secret areas. In order to reach or uncover the locations of golden gems, you will need to acquire various items that grant you special abilities. The items can be found sprouting from mechanical flowers throughout the stage. If you find an item, it's almost always provided purposefully. There are bombs that can be dropped onto blocks marked with a bomb symbol, spike resistance that allows you to walk freely on spikes without taking damage, an item that is essentially the star from Super Mario Bros. That provides a short window of invincibility, destroying anything in its wake, and finally a feather that grants you the ability to float a little bit longer. The hearts in the upper left-hand corner of the gameplay, as I've mentioned, represent your current total health. You take damage from an enemy when not in ball form, or from environmental hazards like spikes. One hit removes a heart unless you have an ability. In that case, you lose the ability but no health. Once you take damage, you are granted a short window of invincibility, and after you've lost all of your hearts, you die and are brought back to the beginning of the stage. The exception to this rule is if you have made it to a boss room and die. You merely start that boss battle from the beginning, but with only one heart, which becomes more difficult as the game moves on. Unfortunately, at times I found the controls to be unresponsive. I became frustrated not by the game's challenges, but by the tools I had to tackle those challenges. There were instances I did not receive the outcome I expected from my movement command, making the game feel less than fluid and unintuitive. This was most notable in the Heart Palace time trials, where your channeling ability is required to climb candy cane-like poles. You'd have to slow down, deliberately face in a particular direction, and then begin your channel. I understand the levels were designed for exploration, but this felt more cumbersome than I would have preferred. The overworld is overly basic. I would have liked to see more of a well-developed background and the ability to pan and zoom the map to view the entire overworld. Even moving between stages was unnecessarily difficult. It was odd. Sometimes when you'd expect to simply press right on the D-pad to move to the stage to the right, it would require you to input another command like up or down. It was weird. The world itself is broken up into 11 different lands that are composed of 3 to 4 stages apiece. Each land has its own theme and music. For instance, Digital Mind was awesome, well designed, took place inside of an old school computer. There were floppy disk platforms, a RAM that ran quickly back and forth, and bridges made of binary code with gritty techno pumping in the background. Super cool level. The 36 total stages themselves are not terribly long. Instead, they make good use of vertical space and provide the opportunity to use Polyroll's wall bounce and ricochet to explore different nooks and crannies and search for golden gems. There were interesting environmental hazards as well, like giant bouncy balls, massive pistons, and spiked balls on chains that can crush you. Another aspect of Polyroll's level design that I really enjoyed was the use of different types of platforms that you had the ability to control. There were large balls of glass that you could stand on and roll across the stage, or a boat that floated on lava that you can jump on top of, push air through its tailpipe, and propel yourself forward. In contrast, there was a limited enemy variety. Some stages did have land-specific enemies like sharks that spit playing cards and the computer RAM, but for the most part you are mostly faced with defeating the same rolling robot, a hydraulic two-legged monster who spits energy, a spring monster with a pig nose, and a bird. Other classic platformers have similar levels of diversity, but Polyroll couples that with sparsely populated levels, where I would find myself with no enemy defeat or environmental hazards to navigate, making certain levels quite easy and borderline boring. After you complete a stage, you are brought to a challenge that reminds me of post-stage scenes from the Kirby series. Starting from the left side of the screen, you are given the opportunity to channel your roll, place just the amount of weight on it, and propel yourself forward to land on and receive an item that you will bring with you to the next stage. In addition to the primary stages, there are 3 Heart Palaces, which are difficult, timed levels that give you 60 seconds to make it to the finish line. If you make it in time, you are awarded a new heart container. These were really fun and challenging levels, with some frustrating aspects like the channeled roll that I discussed earlier. At the end of each land is a creative and challenging boss battle. I found these battles to be the most interesting and fun aspects of the game. Each boss reflects their land's theme in which they reside, like there is a crazy stoplight in Polyrolliopolis, an aggressive appliance on Wadget Island, a giant spider stuck in a computer case in Digital Mind, and many more. The bosses scale nicely throughout the game, particularly in the amount of health gems they offer. Having to respawn in a boss battle with only 1 heart container can be really difficult. It almost becomes a game within the game, as you try to wisely budget and use the health gems available to you in the room. Boss battles also incorporate secondary challenges beyond just trying to inflict damage on the enemy, like inserting floppy disks, dodging traffic, or bouncing off of newly hatched birds. This kept the battles fresh and enjoyable throughout the game. Polyroll's main story took me around 5.5 hours to finish. I have gone back to collect some additional golden gems, but frankly the story has not been compelling enough to justify returning to each stage to finish collecting all of the gems. You're also not given any indication that doing so will result in any additional content or provide some reward, for instance. Overall, Polyroll boasts some creative level design, unique and challenging boss battles, and absolutely wonderful music, but falls short with gameplay mechanics, sparsely populated stages, and a weak storyline. Ultimately, it does not do enough for me to differentiate itself from a crowded retro platformer market. But at a price at under $10, it does provide a few hours of lighthearted, nostalgia-driven entertainment, and for that I'm thankful.